Welcome to First Answers. This is episode 10 in the series, A Parent's Guide to Gender Identity. In this episode, learn how to resolve two risk conditions for healthy gender identity: emotional enmeshment and the internet. Emotional enmeshment reduces freedom and creates anxiety. At the same time, ever-increasing access to the internet creates a perfect storm of confusion, but you can compensate for it. Visit firstanswers.com to find answers for 21st century parents and more about the podcast.
In the last episode, I proposed that there are three conditions typically that frustrate the development of identity and creates confusion about it. One is disruptive emotions that produce an intense amount of anxiety for the child. Another is emotional enmeshment, which creates the absence of freedom to choose and intensifies the stress. And the third one is the confusing and compelling messages that children get on the internet or through social media. And I am proposing that you take a look at those just to make sure that you're not participating in them and you know how to resolve them. So I concluded the last episode having to do with the resolution of these negative, hostile emotions. And on this one, I propose to take a look at the idea of resolving emotional enmeshment and sorting out the messages that are confusing to kids. So first, let's take on emotional enmeshment. Now, most human beings have some experience with truly remarkable emotional ties known as attachment. It is best known as the rapidly developing tie between parents and infants that can and does last forever. Emotional attachment ties family members together, and even non-family members together can create something similar as part of their friendship and love. Attachment for human beings is considered healthy if it's secure, that is, if it brings peace and contentment and bring a predictability where people are concerned. It's not considered healthy if tension and anxiety increase when people come together. And it's amazing how many children feel anxious around their parents and parents feel anxious around their children. In clinical work, that's part of the deal often. And sort of heartbreaking to me to see children who, even when having a conversation with a father or mother, they'll feel threatened by that. Now, some people and families, even those who are not family members, may be especially vulnerable to their own emotions and those of others. So when the attachment experience exists, some may be dependent on each other. Some may feel controlled by the feelings each has with and for the other. And it's entirely possible that it is so tight and strongly felt that it reduces the feelings of freedom for those who participate in it. That's called enmeshment. The solution, as prescribed by mental health professionals, is something called differentiation or individualizing. Don't you love terms like that? When I read something like that or think about it, I think, gee, I went to school for a long time just to increase my vocabulary so I could say those words as if I actually knew what they meant. Differentiation and individualizing means that each person will be allowed the intensity of attachment to weaken just a bit for individuals to develop a sense of themselves and their separateness from others. Failure to do this can mean that children live their lives wound up in the many ties that bind and not live with a sense of their own uniqueness. In an interview some years ago, a mother and her transgender daughter described their experience in a family of two parents and 6 children. The mother, who had had extremely difficult and abusive childhood, she was abused, was highly anxious about making sure that didn't happen when she became a mother. She was overly involved with this daughter and extremely anxious about being a good mother. She often directed what the daughter should do and how she should do it. She became frustrated when the daughter did something other than what she required. And the daughter said that she, quote, always felt like she had to do what her mother wanted, or she would terribly disappoint her mother, who then would be angry and sometimes punish her. Can you imagine going through life worrying about whether or not what you're going to do is to bring punishment? The daughter said that she felt strange all her life, and Sue did not want to wear girls' clothing to do girls' things. And when she told her mother, the mother insisted that she was a girl and required her to wear dresses and other girls' clothing and do traditional girl things, whatever those are, as decided by the mother. Now, as the daughter grew older, she began to communicate less and less with her mother. She dreamed about being a boy and began trying to figure out how to explain herself to her parents and others. She would often say, well, I don't know what I think or feel. I don't know anything about myself, which means that her me category was impoverished. She didn't have a lot of information about herself and so on. It's called the I category, which is about I am. Now, emotional enmeshment is a challenge for many because the absence of individualization can look and feel like empathy and sympathy, and it can often be misunderstood as a form of loyalty to one another. The difference is that healthy feelings of compassion, for instance, they do not require total investment, commitment, and disruption of a person's life, nor does it result in anger and a desire to withdraw and escape. Now, since we're looking for what might prevent successful, healthy gender identity from taking place, the attachment, autonomy, and anxiety process should be considered as one possible cause. And we want to eliminate that so kids develop in a healthy way. When the attachment feelings excessively control the people in the relationship, that's when it's called enmeshment. And when enmeshment exists, feelings of freedom can be dramatically reduced. Anxiety accelerates, and as we know, freedom and agency are necessary to be able to form successful identities, and when it's not there, quite often children don't. Now, I'm going to read a series of statements that describe what parents do, what you might do or have done, and areas where you may want to improve. So, number one, does this apply to you? In my family, we have a strong sense of attachment for each other, but we also respect each other's uniquenesses and the differences between us. That would be a good thing if you did. 2, we recognize emotional dependencies, but we gradually work toward more responsibility for ourselves so that children feel more and more separate and independent and still maintain a loving bond with us. 3, when one or more of our family members may be critical of others because of too little affection, we give more. And we carefully explain what they can do to receive more attention and affection. Do you do that? Well, if you do it a lot, it may cause problems. But if you do it the right amount, which is necessary, then you can remind the child they're loved and cared for and they can feel secure without having to be too tightly tied. 4, in our family, we emphasize each individual family member as unique from everyone else and accept how each is different and unique from the others. John is like this, Bill is like that, both are okay. Girls are like this and boys are like that, and both are okay. Number 5, when we communicate as a family, all family members are given opportunities to participate when we're a group. And when we provide opportunities for one-on-one conversations, where we also pay attention to each person and make sure that they're listened to and respected. And if you do that, that is a good thing as well. And then number 6, and finally, we believe it takes strong and capable individuals to have close and loving families, so we do a lot to help each child grow into a strong, competent, and capable person. In fact, we emphasize that a lot. Those are just some ideas about what happens that are related to whether or not your children will develop a healthy gender identity. Now, some activities include practicing each of those skills so that you become comfortable with them and can do it at the very moment when the timing is right. Now let's go on to sorting out multiple compelling and confusing messages. When it comes to understanding the true impact of the information blizzard that our children are participating in, there's really a good analogy. It is called The Perfect Storm, which was the title of a movie a few years ago. And in the movie's case, it consisted of a combination of weather conditions, a unique location, and a vulnerable boat. And as the story goes, those on the boat fought very hard, but in the end, the storm was too much because it was the perfect storm. Now apply the same idea to the set of conditions that our young people are in today. There is access to the internet and numerous types of social media, compounded by more information than has ever been available. Then add methods of attracting young minds by liking. That means you're asked after you participate in a game, do you like it? And then that facilitates a lot of attention because the people on the internet want to be liked more often. Because the internet is all about eyes. How many people see and click. So it attracts young minds by liking. And when they see the increased attention received by taking some extreme positions, rather than by speaking with common sense and agreement. So if I want to attract more people, I will take an extreme position by saying, okay, this part is about to blow up, or this never happens, or something when it's actually not true. But in addition to that, see, here's the problem. Add fun, games, and access to phones, and this means that anyone who does not have a phone wants one, and those who have them are often not more than 2 feet away from them. Add blatant displays of sexual acts and orientation, including pornography and mainstream TV, popularizing storylines that focus on alternatives other than heterosexual sex linked to love. Consider the political arm of national organizations adding news and lawsuits trying to support their type of sexual orientation. And last, add the emphasis in schools and other public settings, ostensibly seeking support, but where prejudice has existed, but also vindication for their lifestyle. So schools are becoming a boiling pot of different kinds of identity information, and children run into this information often. Conversations among young people appear to regularly occur regarding how each individual identifies. It's like, well, how do you identify, Lynn? Well, I identify as a man. And I identify as a man who is going bald. And there are several other ways to identify. Well, here's the fallout. When faced with so many alternatives, young people may experiment and delay, firming up their sense of gender identity. They may also be confused and feel the need to ask questions and search for what they consider to be the right answer. Please note, in these cases, that they are usually seeking sincerely to validate their own interpretation by obtaining external confirmation. So please respect their request for information and calmly address it. For young people, they may use a trial and error approach without them fully realizing that where gender identity and sexual orientation are concerned, what is experienced is what will be interpreted. So if you try being a trans something one day, or if you try being attracted to the same sex one day, you may in fact discover that you learned that. Then, if it's possible for individuals to seek validation from others who've had the same experience, children with confused ideas about their identity wish to find others like them because they'll say, yeah, it's exactly what I go through. It's also the same challenge. Now, where gender dysphoria and difficulty with same-sex attraction are concerned, we're faced with the influence of respected medical professions who broadcast the importance of medical treatment, including transformative surgery, early in a child's life where there's no evidence that solves the questions and feelings of the child permanently. Now, this is because gender identity involves psychology and emotions as well as physical sensations. This all adds up to the perfect storm. It is easy to see why there appears to be a significant increase in gender identity questioning because the identity process is being used to confirm sexual orientation and gender identity of diverse forms. Now, what are some things that you can do to help Sort out the compelling and confusing messages. First of all, teach your children about sex and reproduction earlier than you might think you need to, and create a conversation relationship where both you and your children can comfortably talk about sex and gender issues. 2, make sure your children learn a positive body concept where knowledge of their bodies is matched by positive attitudes regarding how their bodies work. The evidence is abundant that the children who have difficulty with identities often do not have a healthy body image. They believe parts of their bodies are too large or too small. They believe that they're unattractive in a variety of ways and or that they don't function well. So, therefore, make sure that you regularly talk with your children about how they feel about themselves. And if a child says, I don't know, say, well, I'm willing to be patient till you do know, so let's keep talking about it. Or if they say, I don't know what to say, then say, well, let's talk about giving you more information that you can talk about. Number 4, when children have questions about gender identity, please make sure they're listened to. Ask to explain their interpretation of their question, then understand and make sure they're loved. 5, help children understand that making choices about gender and sexual orientation is not just a momentary choice, but one that involves many other choices. And 6, help your children understand that many children have both feelings and actions that might be considered male and female, and all can be considered healthy. On the way to growing up, before puberty, in puberty, after puberty, it's entirely possible for a boy to have a variety of feelings that he may interpret to be feminine and vice versa. The evidence is clear that future maturation tends to resolve these in the direction of the idea that if I have my sex is male, then my identity will be male as well. 7, and last, carry out a plan to limit access to technology and increase face-to-face conversations and family group time that is positive. I don't think I can underestimate that, or overestimate it, It's easy to underestimate it because a lot of people just don't find the time for these conversations. You need to. You need to have both parents if both parents are involved, so that a boy can talk to his mother and his dad, and a girl can talk to her dad and her mother, so that we have both sets of experiences. And the research is very clear that right at the time when children need to be the most influenced by gender issues, one or both parents withdraw from them. A father, for example, might withdraw from a 13-year-old girl whose body's developing, and he might do that because he doesn't want to encroach on her as a male to a female, but he takes away his affection and his warmth. If it's a reasonable kind, then the daughter will benefit a great deal from that. So will the son, by the way. We have learned that boys are less likely to be harmful to others when their fathers are warm and affectionate toward them. So now, I'm going to conclude this episode by reminding you that please take a look at what is going on currently in your family and see if what I'm talking about can help you make even a small adjustment so that the gender formation of your children is more effectively promoted by you as parents.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the First Answers podcast, which is sponsored by firstanswers.com, where you can find new tools for families and parents of 21st century kids, with a focus on emotional self-reliance. Find First Answers on Facebook, and remember to subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes. Give us a rating and write a review on the Podcasts app or Google Podcasts, and let us know what you think about First Answers. Check out another podcast by Dr. Scoresby called The Christ Questions, which is centered on questions we ask about Jesus Christ and questions he asks us. Dr. Scoresby examines how Christians can build faith in Jesus Christ that lasts and discover the true blessings and rewards for believing.